Welcome to Eggs and Issues, a monthly business forum presented by the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce, bringing timely economic discussion to the region for nearly 40 years. Thank you to our sponsors and partners. Presenting sponsors, Bank of America, Martins Point Healthcare, and Central Maine Power. Cooperating sponsor, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. Reception sponsors, Clark Insurance, Key Bank, and Pretty Flaherty. Community Corner sponsor, Goral Palmer. Tomorrow's leaders and entrepreneurs sponsors, AAA Northern New England and ProSearch. Coffee sponsor, Skowhegan Savings. Parking sponsor, Vitalius Real Estate Group. Media partners, radio sponsor, WGAN. Print sponsor, The Forecaster. TV sponsor, WMTW Maine CW. Business news sponsor, Maine-based. With production support provided by Headlight. Venue partner, Holiday Inn by the Bay. And thank you to our special community partners, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, MEMIC, Spectrum Healthcare Partners, Southern Maine Community College, and the University of Southern Maine. And now, please welcome Portland Community Chamber President, Britt Vitalius.
Good morning. What a great group. This is awesome. Good morning. Welcome to the January 12th, 2023 Eggs and Issues, the monthly business breakfast series brought to you by the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce. My name is Britt Vitalius. I'm the owner of Vitalius Real Estate Group, a real estate brokerage in Portland, and I'm honored to serve as the volunteer president of the Portland Community Chamber. I want to thank all of you for joining us this month for our fifth installment of our 37th season of Eggs and Issues, and our first Eggs and Issues of 2023. We're so happy to be back here in person with all of you today. This morning, we are joined by President and CEO of Jackson Laboratory, Dr. Lon Cardon. But before I invite Dr. Cardon to the stage, I want to take a moment to again recognize each of our Eggs and Issues sponsors who make this event possible. First and foremost, our presenting sponsors, Bank of America, Martins Point Healthcare, and Central Maine Power. I also want to thank our other generous sponsors, our cooperating sponsor, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, our reception sponsors, Clark Insurance, Key Bank, and Pretty Flaherty, our community quarter sponsor, Goral Palmer. Tomorrow's leaders and entrepreneurs sponsors, AAA Northern New England and ProSearch. Through this program, the Chamber is able to offer students in the region, both at the high school and college level, an invitation to attend Eggs and Issues at no cost. I believe we have students here today from USM and Gorham High School. If so, could you please stand and be recognized? Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. If you see one of these young folks afterwards, please go up and say hi. I think it's just my favorite part that young people are out and getting involved in the community and issues here with the business community. So thank you guys for coming. Our coffee sponsor, Skowhegan Savings. Our parking sponsor, Vitalius Real Estate Group. I'm now thanked frequently for parking everyone's cars. Our special thank you to our media partners, The Forecaster, WGAN, WMTW Maine CW, and Maine-based. And our FMI, or for more information sponsors, the Portland Public Library. Production support by Headlight Audiovisual, and our venue, obviously, is Holiday Inn by the Bay. And finally, a very special thank you to our special community partners who support all of our chamber initiatives, Spectrum Healthcare Partners, University of Southern Maine, Southern Maine Community College, and MEMIC. Let's have another round of applause for all of our generous sponsors. And now on to today's presentation. Founded more than 90 years ago in Bar Harbor to uncover the genetic basis of cancer, the Jackson Laboratory has expanded into nearly every disease area, including a National Cancer Institute-designed cancer center, aging, rare disease, the biology of addiction, and more. This morning, we're joined by President and CEO of Jackson Labs, Lon Cardon, PhD, to discuss the growth of this global nonprofit biomedical institution, the scientific and economic impact of Jackson Lab, and the bright, shining future of the biomedical industry in Maine. Please welcome to the stage Dr. Lon Cardon.
Well, thanks very much, Britt. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be with you today. I'd like to thank Britt for the invitation, and also our own from Jackson Lab, Luann Ballesteros, who probably made this happen. Luann's just taken over chair of the Maine Chamber, so we're probably going to lose you for a while at the lab, but good luck with that. Hey, it's a real honor to have some time, and a little bit daunting for me. I've only been here for a year, and it's been a great privilege, but I haven't had the opportunity to interact with many of you, and I look forward to using this as an introduction. Just to orient myself, if I can see, how many of you know of the Jackson Laboratory? Maybe? Excellent, excellent. So that helps me quite a lot. Do you know, or how many of you would realize, that just about every drug that has been approved by the FDA in the last, let's say, 20 years has been enabled by a mouse at the Jackson Laboratory, or one derived? Almost everything, all the things that we're taking, came through us up in Bar Harbor, one way or another, directly or indirectly. So the footprint there is really fantastic. I thought what I would do today is because I'm new to you and you're new to me, I thought I'd give a little introduction, very brief introduction to my background and what got me here to the lab. Bring you up to speed on the Jackson Lab, and you'll hear me call it as JAX a lot. That's what we refer to it as. And then where you'll see me get most impassioned is about the science. That's what brought me here. I love it. I'm honored to be part of it. And then we can talk a little bit about, I think we all share the same challenges: workforce, transportation, housing. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how we're dealing with that, and maybe get a dialogue going on how you're dealing with it, and so we can all join forces. So that's the batting order for today. So my background, I've been called many things in my life. Dilettante is one of them. Forrest Gump sometimes is another. I have from an academic perspective, probably a unique, an N of one pathway in my career. Started out as your standard academic. In the 1990s, it looked like if we could just find genes that cause human disease, that drug discovery thing's easy. And I bought into that. So I went into industry, which nobody did back then. But then I realized that wasn't going to work. So I stepped back out of industry and went back to academia and became a professor in Oxford in the UK and elsewhere for many, many years. And then went back to industry to go to pharmaceutical industry and biotech and so on. And now I'm back in academia. So hence the dilettante, back and forth. And that just seems completely, the young people don't come ask what the career plan was. I didn't have one. But I have had two goals and only two goals throughout all that, and it's partly why I took this circuitous path. And the first one was to find those genes that cause human disease. What's broken that might cause us to have whatever diseases we get. And objective two was to do something about it. And I've gone back and forth. To find the genes, that's normally been the academic side, and do something about it is the industry side. And I'll explain, hopefully, to you along the way why those two objectives have brought me to JAX right now. So that's my history. A little bit about JAX. It sounds like most of you are aware of it. I'll give you just a brief background then. 1929, so moving up on our 94th year at the Jackson Lab, started by a fellow named Harvard-trained Michigan professor named C.C. Little, who, a cancer researcher, was realizing that in order to understand humans, where we can't really experiment on, that the mouse might inform what's going on in humans, sort of the small gas engine to try and explain how something bigger might work. At least you could get a sense of how things work and how things fail when we get things like cancer. And mice, so he was studying mice, really early days. Mice don't like heat that much. He was in Michigan. He had friends and colleagues in this place called Bar Harbor, and came out to bring his mice because they tolerated it better. And it was really apocryphal, because that has created now what is, if you look at the rest of this slide, we're global. 11 locations, nearly 3,000 employees, 400 PhDs. We've got to have one of the highest densities of higher education scientists per capita, per square foot maybe, in a lot of part of the United States. And that little bit on the bottom right, I think I'm particularly proud of. In biomedicine, in particular in the field of genetics, which is really big now. It wasn't always that way, but it's attracted quite a lot of scientific expertise over the years. Everybody knows JAKs. Most everybody, myself excluded, has been to Bar Harbor during their training somewhere. 10,000 people have come through Bar Harbor. Everybody knows about JAKs and Bar. Anywhere you go to a conference, you say you're at JAKs. They say, oh yeah, I spent the summer of 1977 or whatever in Bar Harbor. And so it's really become something powerful from this fellow who was trying to avoid the heat and bringing mice around in little blueberry crates, which is as I understand it, true. It's burned down twice, I think, and yet been rebuilt. So that's the JAKs history. What makes it really special? And I was just speaking with someone that it's unique in Maine, but it's not only unique in Maine. I think this combination that I'm going to try to describe is unique anywhere. So JAKs has two pieces. It's all one family, but it's two pieces. One is building on that tradition of studying mice for human disease. It's built the biggest mouse facility, producer of laboratory mice for medical research in the world. Right, biggest producer in the United States. Everybody who studies, that's why I can say things like all those drugs that have been approved, because everybody uses the JAKs mice. So you've got this huge mouse enabler for research globally. And that's the site you see on the right is in Ellsworth. We do that in Bar Harbor as well. Sacramento, we just acquired another facility in Japan. So that's a real big organization to support global research. And what's unique about it is on the right-hand side of this slide that you see is we also have our own nonprofit research institute. Well, the whole JAKs is nonprofit, but our own research, and that mouse work funds and enables us to do pioneering research of our own in the labs at Jackson. Now, some of you will know other research institutes. There exist other non-for-profit research institutes, cancer centers, and Memorial Sloan Kettering you may have heard of, or City of Hope or something. Those exist. And there exist others for-profit who sell mice. But nobody integrates those. Only Jackson Lab does that, and it's immensely powerful because our researchers know more about how mice work to inform humans than just about anybody else on the planet. So it's really, really something special. And it's one of the pieces that really drew me to the Jackson Lab. Now, why now for me to the lab? This is a cartoon diagram. I have to tell you the story. I'm old enough now, so I remember when genetics wasn't this big research entity. And in fact, the story I always like to tell is when I was a student or just a young faculty member, we used to have our conferences. There was about 100 of us total that studied in this field. We'd have them in hotels that nobody really wanted because we were not very popular, with no windows, and we'd have these really vitriolic arguments about whether there were 8 genes or 10 genes, or if you're really out there might be 12 that cause human disease. We didn't know. Right? We had an Alzheimer's gene at that time, and the breast cancer genes, a couple of the breast cancer genes were coming out. And in the last 20 years, that 8 or 10 or 12 genes that cause human disease are now 10,000. Can't keep up with them. There's only 20,000 genes in the whole human genome, and half of them, if you break them, something bad's going to happen. Probably more, because they're being found all the time. So I said at the beginning, my personal objective was to find genes that cause human disease and to do something about it. The field, and I've been lucky enough to be associated with a number of these findings actually in my academic life before, the field has been absolutely successful in finding genes. We know a lot of biology, and JAX has had a big role in that, but we haven't done that much with it, right? Do we have fantastic new therapies for heart disease or respiratory disease, or a lot of them? Not yet. Cancer, as I'll say in a moment, cancer is making some really interesting progress. And in rare diseases, some great progress is being made from genetics, but not so much the rest. I want to communicate to you, I think JAX is poised to have a unique position to make a dent in that translation from basic research to doing something about it. And that's why I came, because that's my objective too. So that's my dilettante path has brought me here. And those things you're looking at there are depictions of human chromosomes, and the little annotation on those, the little dots, are different diseases that have been associated with a defect in that part of that human chromosome. They're completely decorated. And again, 20 years ago when we were looking at these, there were 10 dots on those pictures. That's it. So the field has done really, really well. And now you go to those same conferences. I got to tell you the end of this story. So that's windowless conference rooms that we used to go to. The biggest one in the world is the American Society of Human Genetics. It just reconvened for the first time in a while in October down in Los Angeles. The entertainment for those 10,000 people that were at the conference was Maroon 5. So it's gone a little bit different, right? The field changed just a little bit. And the head of our Farmington site at the Jackson Lab had a backstage pass. How he did that, I don't know. So that's genomics. So what does JAX do? So we have a number of different, is this working? Can I leave this? Yeah. We have a number of different foci, but we really span all research areas. And if you think of our mice, people use those for every aspect of every disease research. But at JAX in our own labs, we have a few centers that we really focus on. We're really proud to have National Cancer Institute designation for 40 years, basic research. So there's a lot of cancer centers that are associated with hospitals, and they're really important because they're the ones that are treating patients. But there's only a few that are continuously funded to find the cause of the problem, and that's JAX. Basic research, really trying to identify what could enable true cures, and not just temporary treatments. Really exciting, and I said there's some. I love what's going on in cancer right now. So many different aspects. My favorite part, for those of you that don't, and it's enabled a lot by JAX, but by people around the globe. We've been trying to make drugs for cancer, for different cancers forever, and we make these molecules and we stick them in, or we do chemotherapy, these toxic things for cancers. And the best solution that people have found is not to do that. Not to make new drugs and put something which is effectively poisonous to address a really big problem, but to treat our own immune systems that cancer is bad. You turn our own bodies against it. It's the best army you've got. That's really exciting. Can we just train the things that fight COVID and flu and everything else, to look at that cancer and say, that's what I want to attack? That's really neat. That's really, really powerful. And it doesn't work in everybody, but where it works, it's really profound. And that's one main direction for the field. And the immunology is really complicated, and I'm just a humble geneticist, so I won't tell you how, but the JAX mice are contributing really importantly to that, because it is training the immune system in a way, and if we can train the mice, we can learn how that works and target it right where we want. I won't spend a lot of time on all these. The aging research, the Jackson Lab investigators are doing some really interesting things, particularly in Alzheimer's disease, which I know is a special interest of Senator Collins and others. And there's a lot of avenues that people are searching. I like the one, we know a few genes that cause Alzheimer's disease. And that's really bad news, because if you have more of one of those, it's kind of a time bomb. The likelihood is, if you just live long enough, you're gonna get that, right? So that's tough, and there are other diseases like that. Huntington's disease is a rare disease that some people, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's has a few genes like that. And what our investigators have done is turn the question around. It's really interesting, because Alzheimer's is really hard research. The biology is really tough, and it happens late in life. And clinical trials are hard because you treat someone and then wait until something happens. They can take forever. What if you turn the question around and you say, okay, let's put that mutated gene in a mouse that should cause Alzheimer's disease. Why don't we look at those where it doesn't? Healthy aging, and see what's protecting that. Turn it all the way around. Really clever thinking on that. And that's leading a sort of a sea change in Alzheimer's research, which it's a hard one, but we hope that will lead to improvements in human health. Rare diseases is the area that I came most recently from. As a geneticist, it's really important and profound to work in rare diseases. I'll come back to that in just a moment. And you wouldn't expect so much, but we have one of the biggest genetic centers for addiction biology, which is really important, and it's important in Maine, it's important globally. We have research in many other areas, but those are sort of our primary foci. I thought I would talk a little bit about rare diseases and cancer, just real quickly. So rare diseases aren't rare. They're individually rare, but collectively really common. In fact, I don't know how many people, a couple hundred, right? So 20 of you, on average, should have been impacted in your family or someone you know by a rare disease. 10% of the population in rare diseases. So again, individually, really rare, but you put them all together, and it's a big killer. And they're really unfortunate diseases because they're often fatal. And they're often diagnosed, it's really hard to see, they're diagnosed in a family because the first one who got the rare disease didn't make it. And so they see, those parents are carriers for some genetic defect, and you look at the second one, but you wouldn't have ever otherwise known. So they're really tough. They're really profound to work on as a researcher. They're fun as a scientist to work on because you kind of know if you're working in a drug discovery program, you know if it's going to work really quickly. And that's inspiring, and it sort of motivates everyone in rare diseases. Most of them don't have drugs available to them. I thought I'd use one quick example to tell you the Jackson Lab input on these type of things. So this paper came out, this article came out in a month and a half ago or so, 2 months ago, in the New York Times. We picked it up just like anyone else did, and it's a story of a family, just as I described before. 2 sisters were born with some rare disease and perished early. And they picked up the third one, and they realized if they wanted to treat this disease, they were going to have to get in with some drug really early. And what they did is shocking to me as a scientist. They went in with, firstly, a treatment called gene therapy, which is great. I've worked on these before. It means you got something broken, replace it, right? That's all it is. Your gene is broken. You inherited something broken. Put one in that works. And that's good. And those work in other ways. The trick on that is, though, unlike, I don't know, some of you will be on statins. If you had some reaction to statins, you just stop taking them. With a gene therapy, once it's in, it's in. There's no turning that thing off. It's going, right? So if it works, wonderful. It could be close to a cure. If it doesn't, or it causes you got a problem. So they not only did gene therapy, they did it in pregnancy, in utero. So that's a bold thing to do. But if you're a parent and you lost the first 2, you might. So this woman made this decision to do that, and it's a great story thus far. I think Ayla's 16 months old now and living well. If you look a little further in here, you say, oh, this woman. I happen to have met this physician who did this, Tippy McKenzie, who not only has one of the coolest names I think in science, but she's really impressive. It says, she tried it with mice. Okay, what mice was that? Well, it turns out 30 years ago, at the Jackson Lab, researchers that work in the lab, they do this really thing, they call it the deviant search. It's really fun. They look at these people are working with mice every day. And to you and me, these mice would be identical. They're bred to be genetic clones of each other. So you're looking at a little cage of mice. They're all gray. They all look the same. You do it day in and day out. These people pick up minute differences amongst these mice because they're looking at them all the time. Well, this finding right here for this baby was enabled because somebody in the lab noticed that one mice out of hundreds had a tiny bit shorter nose. And in that particular mouse was a mutation. And when over 30 years people studied that mutation, and that study of that mutation enabled that intrauterine gene therapy. 30 years it took to do it. That's pretty cool, and that's pretty rewarding to people like me to see this happen. And it's also fun at the lab because those searches, those observations of these mutations still exist today, and it's kind of like the faculty fight over them. When somebody sees something new and says, oh, I want to work on that one. No, I want to work on that one. It's really good, but only at the Jackson Lab could you have something like that happening, where you have this marriage of all that wonderful mouse production, if you will, for the research community and the researchers themselves. It's the back and forth. So that's rare diseases. Cancer, I just wanted to mention one cancer program that we have ongoing called MCGI, Maine Cancer Genomics Initiative. It's a partnership with a lot of people. Alphond has supported it generously. It's a really neat program on the human side of things. It doesn't, so the good side of cancer is because it's been studied for so long from the Nixon administration, I think, the war on cancer, that there are a lot of drugs underway and have been approved for different forms of cancer. And there's thousands, I think over 1,000 clinical trials ongoing for cancer drugs at any given time. That's the good news. The bad news is there's so many things going on. There's 1,000 clinical trials going on. Nobody knows where to point you. So you go and you get a cancer diagnosis, and how can any physician know every single study that's going on or every drug that's out there? It can't. So they put together 100% of the oncologists in Maine with all this different expertise. So you get diagnosed with a cancer, they run a makeup on you, and these people sit together, bring all the different expertise together. They know collectively those 1,000 trials that are going on and point you in the right direction. And it's working. It's really, really interesting to see, and I'm proud of it as an interloper from away. I'm proud to see that happen in Maine because people collaborate here. Can you imagine that happening? Sorry to insult whomever might be from Boston, but that would be sharp elbows, right? That's my patient, that's my mutation, that's my study, that's my drug. But they're working on it here together, and it matters. It matters so much that now it's being explored nationally to bring these tumor boards together and have what they call, I think it's a really interesting name, genome navigators, to help guide you through to the right drug for your particular form of cancer. Really, really super powerful. This next slide shows where those patients are coming from throughout Maine, and a great success story of ours, amongst many, John from Bangor, who was in exactly that situation, under treatment, was resistant, was not looking like a promising prognosis. Went through the system. They found him to targeted therapies for his cancer. Touch wood, looking really good right now. So that's one of the things that's going on in cancer. Another thing that I just thought I would let you know, this is Ryan Toohey. Ryan is a Maine child, born in Gorham, went to UMaine, went away to Boston's finest, and then came back. And Ryan is doing some really, really important things. We've all watched COVID, the expansion of COVID. It's got this variant, and now we're going into this variant, and is this one going to handle the vaccines, and is this one? Most of all that variant tracing and all the research that has guided that through Maine is Ryan. He did all that. So people get diagnosed with it, their samples, they get to Ryan, Ryan does the sequencing. So all those trends in Maine with CDC is from this guy, Ryan, too. He's a really special character. We got to watch him because he's going to be a star. But just to show you that it's not just cancer and rare diseases and others, but we can adapt the tools that we have in many different ways. So a couple of points about JAX in Maine itself. So we've got 1,600 based employees. You can read it there yourself. 123 towns, 13 counties. We like to think we pay them well, and we've tried to increase it. And you can see the sites that we have there. Like you, we all do our best to address the housing situation and invest in our employees. It's an acute problem. It's probably housing, transportation, workforce, childcare, just like you. These are real issues for us. We're really proud that we were able to open, at our own expense, a 24-unit, $10 million housing campus, walking distance
to the labs. It makes a huge difference, but it was oversubscribed before the ground was broken. So we do what we can, but we need to do a lot more. I moved there a year ago. I can't find a place on the island at Jackson. I have a rent from one of our faculty members. It's that hard. It's really, really a problem for us. But we do what we can. We broke ground, I'm really proud of this, on a childcare center that we just did a little bit ago, and we have one of the most sophisticated transportation systems to bring people in from all over to the Jackson, from all over the 4 counties anyway. 12,000 trips, I think we had just in 2022 alone to get them to the lab. You can read this in terms of the economic impact, and given that many of you know of Jackson, we're really proud of this. We're proud to have a great impact in Maine, and we see it as a complete symbiosis here. I would point you to that 2012, the second bullet point there, number of Maine-based Jackson employees. We've increased a lot, and we're continuously growing, but like almost all of you probably, we've got a strange COVID workforce dynamic where people turn over a lot and they don't stay with their jobs, they don't come to work and all that. Last year, 2022, I think we had around 500 job offers to go out to employees in Maine, okay? Of those that declined the offer, how many said, I'm not coming because I can't afford the housing? A third. 1/3 turned down the job because they couldn't afford to take it. That's a problem. That's a really significant problem for us, and I'm sure some of you have that similarly going on. I don't know what happened at the bottom of that slide. So that's the economic impact. We're really proud of our community volunteers. We see our position within Maine as, again, a symbiosis, a synergy for just about everything, and the more that we can do together with the community that we do, we give people time off to do it. We're doing more and more of those things, and we'll continue to do so. I wanted to just end with telling you where we're going on this, because it's a new challenge for us. Genetics, I told you genetics, the field of genetics has gone from this sort of the windowless room backwater. It also used to be the case we would do our genetic studies by studying families. And we would look at transmission of disease. We would say, okay, mom has this disease. Does she transmit it to the offspring, and does the offspring transmit it to the grandchild? And what we really try to do is find the genes that transmit just with that disease, and we link them together. And so you would study, I don't know, 50, 100 people or something like that. Field's changed. That game's over. This is big data now. Now the enablers of the next generation of discoveries for improving human health are going to be really, really large data sets that merge things together. Think of, anybody heard of 23andMe? Anybody? Yeah, okay, so 23andMe, which is, well, I won't bore you with it. I go back, that's a very interesting company we call it recreational genetics. It's, but the 23andMe model is to bring together your genetic information with your disease information. Now for them, it's not hospital-based disease, it's asking you questions about your disease, but it's the same concept. So instead of studying 20 or 50 people, 23andMe has 13 million. Right? Most healthcare systems are bringing together genetic information with their health record information. The big tech giants are seeing this future. Google's in the game, Microsoft's in the game, NVIDIA's in the game. It's becoming, instead of just studying it in families, the next generation of real discoveries is going to take a big, big community, and all those data sets are coming together. It's a really interesting time. There's a lot of ethical questions in those type of things, real insurance questions. But there's no doubt that those really large data sets will enable new discoveries. And to me, that's perfect. That's not what the Jackson Lab does. Others do that. That's wonderful. But they're going to enable all these discoveries, and they're going to need to prove them somewhere. The paths are going to come right back to Jax, because they're going to put them back in that mouse to understand if this discovery that I think is happening in humans actually is real, and how does it work? And we're back to C.C. Little's model of let's figure it out in something a little simpler than humans and see how it works. So So where I would like to take the Jackson Lab and where we're really thinking of going is be right in the center of that next generation of research, which is big science, collaborative throughout many, many different disciplines of medicine, of basic research, of technology, artificial intelligence, so on. But that creates a new problem for us, which is we've got to build, not only tackle the workforce problem, we've got to really tackle innovation in Maine and bring that in. So that's our next challenge, is how can we grow STEM? I want to talk to the kids over here. That next generation, you're it, right? We need you to enable the discoveries that I think really will change the direction of healthcare in the future. And that's the next step for the Jackson Lab. I'll finish with this because I think this is an interesting vignette. So I'm a professed Anglophile. I went to go live in England for 2 years, and I stayed for 10 and took citizenship and all that. So England's a really neat place to do genetics research. And they've led in many aspects of population-based genetics. Most recently, what they've decided to do is get DNA sequencing at scale on all births, because your DNA doesn't change. So if you do that test once, it goes with you forever, and they've reasoned at a population level that's probably a good investment, although it's a lot of money to begin with. So they've started this, and the head of Genomics England called me up a few months ago. He said, we got our first 100,000 in, and these are babies that look like there's a problem with them, but they don't know what. They're undiagnosed, they're floppy or some dysmorphology in the face or something. So they don't know, so they said, we got our first 100,000, we've got the DNA on them, about a quarter of those, we can figure it out with the DNA, and then we can send them down to this treatment or this study or whatever. But 3/4 we can't. Can you use your mouse to help us diagnose those babies? That is really, really neat, because the mouse, they have like an accelerated human. Their lifespan is not 75 years, it's a couple, right? So we can introduce those same mutations that's in the undiagnosed baby and watch what the progression is going to look like. We can and then predict and offer some information to the families of what the progression is going to be for that child. So it's just another example of where the paths for us, for the community of healthcare, hopefully and clearly do go through the Jackson Lab. We're looking to tackle, again, what brought me here, the translation of that human genetic information into human health. And I hope to do it with a lot of you, because it definitely takes a village. I'll pause there and take questions if I may. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Wonderful.
Yeah, great.
My name is Vincent Grant. I'm currently an undergraduate/graduate student at the University of Southern Maine. I'm in the Accelerated Law program as well as the MPH program, which is a Master's of Public Health for those who may not be aware. My area of research is neuroscience and philosophy of sound, music, and mind. So currently my intersection lies with music therapy, but here in the state of Maine, the licensure options are incredibly limited. I would have to get an MSW, a Master's in Counseling, and then combine that with my neuroscience research to offer something that I could bill insurance for. Currently, as it is, Mainers would have to pay out of pocket for a treatment that I believe is life-changing. It's been life-changing for me. I could not walk for 9 months of the past year, and it was music that allowed me to learn how to do that again. I may have MS, ALS. I'm still in the process of going through my own diagnostics. I've worked with a geneticist, and the results have been vague thus far. I still need sequencing myself, but that has not impeded my ability to succeed academically. Now, my question for you, as someone who's interested in the field of bioethics in particular, how can students like me get involved with Jackson Labs so that way we can be part of the future that you are trying to build, particularly in the state of Maine, so we can expand access to these treatments in rural Maine to Mainers who are low income, to Mainers with conditions that impact their ability to access healthcare, because that's what we need. Thank you.
I said we've got a bus system. No, open doors, and it takes all of that, right? The ethical side is immensely important. You touched on the pricing issue with drugs is going to be on us very soon. It's already there, but if we don't watch it. So we need all input. Now, if you want to change your law trajectory and you want to go into science, I'll give you my card, right? Any other questions? Yes.
I have essential tremors, and I'm wondering if you do research on anything like that that is not life-threatening, but does affect millions of people.
Yeah. Do we do work at the lab itself on essential tremors? Not that I know of directly on that particular condition, but do people use the mice for, in general? I mean, there's a ton of epilepsy research. There's a ton of movement disorders. It's one of the easier things to spot in those deviant searches. So I mean, maybe we could talk after. I bet we could connect you with those that are using Jackson Lab mice for essential tremors and others, because it's a classic area for mouse research.
Good morning, Peter Plum from Portland on Park Street around the corner. Our family has had a very unfortunate experience with the BRCA gene. And we understood at one point that Jax was very active in researching the BRCA gene. I'm wondering where things are at right now with respect to that issue.
Yeah.
We have a granddaughter that I hope can avoid it if at all possible.
Yeah. Well, so the BRCA gene is, well, there's two, but they're one of those. When I said there were 20 years plus ago, there were 10 genes known. Sadly, those were amongst them, and we still don't have those problems cracked. Sorry, the lights got me. I'll come over on this side. What we have discovered is that a lot of these genes have multiple ways to be broken. And so it's becoming more and more specific. Just having the gene doesn't lead you to a specific therapy. Specific mutations in that gene will respond differently to different therapies. And that's kind of like this MCGI navigator question, which is the right treatment for your familial specific case is the question. And you know, you might do well to connect with someone like this MCGI and see what is going on for your specific type of disease. It's very interesting if you think of, we used to just say way back in the day, you know, this patient has cancer. Then it would be, this patient has breast or ovarian cancer. And now it's, this patient has this mutation in this specific gene and this form of BRCA1 or BRCA1 or BRCA2 cancer. So it's become real precision health. And the treatments have to match that precision of the uniqueness in your family. That's the problem. I mean, the hard part of, I think the radio person was asking me this morning, how bullish are you on the cures and the transformation? And I am, because we're starting to see some of those, but not for everything, sadly. BRCA1 we've had for 25 years now, 30. Huntington's disease, which is a rare disease, was found in 1992. Nothing. Yeah. Some of these profound gene therapies that are coming out right now are only now coming out for the genes that the very first genes we ever detected. Sickle cell, cystic fibrosis, Duchenne's muscular, we're only now, these were late 1980s, 1990s, just now getting treatments. So better progress, but not for everything is the sad state of affairs. Yes?
Hi, Lon. It's Chris Mallett from
Hi, Chris.
the Rue Institute. I love listening to you talk about this. Thanks for your talk this morning. It was wonderful. Can you share a little bit of your thoughts about the potential for new business creation as this research opportunity infused by data manifests here in Maine, and what it might mean for startups and the economy long term as this translates to new companies?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for the question. When I was a kid, you didn't go, as I mentioned before, you didn't cross over academia to industry. You wore the white hat or you wore the dark hat. Now, that next generation, these guys over here, they not only are comfortable going back and forth, they expect it. They expect you go down into Boston, or you go in the Bay Area where I moved from. The young ones expect to do their training in basic research while they're involved with some startup over here. And you know, Chris, I find that healthy. I think that actually advances science, because in that startup side of things, not just the monetary side, but in the startup side, if you're working on a program that is applied, you're asking a question to improve human health, then you know what the needs are. You know what studies to measure. You know what to do. You know what questions to ask, as opposed to just basic research. So one of the things I really want to do is foster that ecosystem. Jackson Lab doesn't have a strong tradition of startups and mentality. We've had our head down in the, really focused on that research. But I think not only to be competitive do we need to change that and be able to draw those people that, we need that innovation, the next generation out of Boston and elsewhere. We've got to not only change that culture, but I think I would like to be even a little bit better. I'd like to be that place where, all things being equal, yeah, I'll go to Jack's because it's kind of easier to do that startup and kick that off and get that funding and rotate. Why not? Why don't we do that? It's healthy. It's healthy for the science. And I think if we don't do it, we won't be competitive for the youngsters. So I can't see you, Chris, but that's really, really important. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Asha Chevaria. I'm at Bernstein Share. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on recreational genetics and whether people want to know or should want to know.
Where to start on that story? No, because I know the founder of 23andMe is a good friend of mine, and her name is Ann Wachitsky, and she started 23andMe when I was in Oxford. She started on the back of my lab's research. Mine and others, on a body of work that was coming out at that time. And she got into genetics research for a really profound reason, because this is all public knowledge, her husband carried a Parkinson's gene, one of those really debilitating ones, and they had just had their son at that time, Benji, and they wanted to know if Benji had that gene. And out of that came an interest in, and she had the luxury of having a little bit of money because her husband is Sergey Brin, who founded Google. And Benji's father. So I think, I'm biased on it. I think it's great what they've done. They've popularized genetics, they've challenged, they've interacted with the FDA to push back and say, we do have this privacy situation. Genetics is the ultimate fingerprint, let's make no doubt about it, right? It is really, really powerful, and it is individual. And she's fought a lot of those fights, and I think it's raised the bar for everybody. I think that's really useful. When I say recreational genetics, it's because I know a few physicians in the room. I would argue that their clinical information is probably more powerful than just self-report. And the recreational part is if you do 23andMe, it says, do you have taste for this or something? Do you have the gene for taste or the gene for gray hair or something? I would rather understand whether I have a propensity towards heart failure than I would, am I going to get gray, which now I know. But in general, I think it's been a positive force and it's moved the field. But where I'm really interested is taking those types of resources and moving them into that real clinical domain where we can change health.
Hi,
Yeah.
Susan Morris. I live here in Portland. Thank you. So much of what you spoke about today brings such incredible hope, so thank you for that. And then I see the number of how many job openings there are, and my heart absolutely goes cold at the idea of the housing. And I'm feeling a theme here, and it just really seems that we're at a point of what do we do? Thank you for the Rue Institute for being here in Maine, yourselves, Bigelow Labs in Booth Bay Harbor. We have these incredible hubs of potential innovation. We're finally attracting people potentially with great salaries, career opportunities, a chance to change the world, and then we can't figure out the housing. So I guess there are a lot of leaders in this room, and I wonder if you have any kind of call to action for us. And I don't know where we go, but I'm looking at what can happen at a state level in public sector. What is the responsibility of municipalities? What are the responsibilities of the employers in these various communities? What role do developers play in this? It's tough times for developers. But I'm just curious I guess I wanted to give you the opportunity to say a little bit more about, I care greatly, we all do, about the healthcare, the daycare, the transportation, but the number one stumbling block right now seems to be the housing. Thank you.
I think you've asked and answered it in a way. It takes a village on this, right? We're all going to have to work together on this. I put up there that we spent $10 million to build 24 units, right? I'm really proud of that. I'm really pleased, and I can take no credit because those decisions were taken long before I arrived on the scene, but for the lab to do that. But really, what you want us doing is spending that money on trying to figure out cancer. You don't want us building houses. That's not our mission. That's not our business. We're doing it because we need to, and it's the right thing for the employees. And we can't afford to solve this problem on our own. It's going to take all of those that you brought together, I think. And I know she's asked the question, if we want to get a dialogue going, if others want to chime in, if I had the magic bullet here, I'd be using it. But it is a problem, and I get asked a lot. Of course, the new guy from away on the job, are you going to keep Jackson, Maine? We're global. We could. I absolutely want to keep Jackson, Maine. It's the jewel, right? And Bar Harbor, and with the Rue Institute and so on. But it is pushing water uphill, and it's going to take all of those to come together somehow. And if anyone, you can have the floor if anyone wants to chime in on this one. Yeah. Charlie. Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Charlie.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, I see you.
All the great work that your organization is doing. Would you care to speculate? What's the time horizon where you think you'll see, some really big breakthroughs? Is it 5 years, 10 years? You talked about the 30-year mutation that it took. Yep. Are we accelerating? Technology, they say the computer processing power doubles every 2 years, or whatever the saying is. Can you care to share what your thoughts are on what time horizons we may start to see things change?
Yeah. I will, and I'll caveat it by saying it's really speculation, because I don't have a crystal ball on this, and I don't want to be overly optimistic. Where things are the reason I am optimistic in some things. Where things are working today and getting better and better and better is in rare diseases. And there's a scientific reason that is because they're simpler. They're biologically simpler. If you think of type 2 diabetes, there are lots of causes. There are lots of genetic causes. There's environmental causes. There's and it's really complex. But if you think of hemophilia, it's one gene. And so that if you can fix that, put a good copy of that broken gene in, you can work on that and fix it. So I am very bullish on some rare diseases. It used to be the case that we would say in drug discovery, the problem has always been delivery. Can you get a drug to the right tissue? If you have a problem with your brain, you need to get it into the brain, and that's not easy. If it's a liver problem, you need to get it in the liver. Drug delivery is not so much the problem. And in rare diseases, the problem is not knowing the mutations. We have those. We heard Braca's story just a minute ago. It's not drug delivery. It's often not money, because there's hardly anything more powerful than a mother with an offspring with something that they can raise money. Actually, it boils down to, can I figure it out in a mouse where I've got a drug I can test? So I'm bullish on rare diseases, and where I think some of this work will really go is, I was just down at the NIH just not long ago, and I was reviewing their 10-year plan, and they've got a program that they call Redefining the Nomenclature of Common Disease. So their view is type 2 diabetes. In fact, what did the guy say? Type 2 diabetes, that's just a bunch of words. That's not a disease. That's a bunch of symptoms that we threw together a long, long time ago. What type 2 diabetes is a bunch of little rare diseases with different causes. And if we can understand those rare diseases, it'll be like the cancer game. We'll make individual treatments for each component, throw out the idea of what is type 2 diabetes, but actually we'll be cracking it one gene at a time. If that's true, and it's definitely true in some areas already, we know. If that comes to fruition, then I think there's really great hope. If we just tackle chronic diseases as they are today, I'm not nearly as optimistic in the short term.
We have time for one more question.
One more question.
Dr.
Yep.
Cardon,
Hi.
excellent presentation. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Pleasure.
it. I'm Anthony Kaola. I'm with the IDEX Bioanalytics business, run that business at IDEX. And one thing I'm interested in are your thoughts on the outlook for funding and resourcing the programs that you've articulated in the sort of the near term, given the current economic environment and economic pressures. Just curious what you're seeing in your business and sort of what you think the trajectory over the next 24 months is going to look like. Thank you.
For funding?
Yeah.
Funding is, for all of us, is a real problem in research, and we're always needing more. Genetics as a field has been fortunate. The omnibus, I think, helps a bit in the genetics world. The problem for us with funding is the problem that I described to you of going from 10 people in a windowless room to 10,000 with Maroon 5, is it's gone big. And that's not the level of funding this community is used to. So we need to go like physics did with having really large programs instead of having a bunch of small ones. That's a sea change for us. And that's going to be the real challenge that we're facing going forward. We can't do this just bolting together a few nickels and dimes from the couch. We actually are going to have to go into a larger area. That's where our biggest funding problem will be in the future. Again, ending on a negative note, but there, there you go. Thanks so much for all your questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cardon, for being here today, for joining us this morning, and taking time out of, I'm sure, it's a very busy schedule to be here with the greater Portland community and business community. To stay apprised of all future updates, we encourage everyone here to sign up for the Chamber's Advocacy and Events newsletter. If you look on your tables, you'll see a QR code. You can scan that as a way of staying up to date. Please find a complete list of all the Chamber's upcoming events at the Chamber's website, portlandregion.com. We hope to see you all at the next Eggs and Issues on Wednesday, February 15th, where we will be talking to the president of the University of New England, James Herbert. Thank you all for being here. This is a great room. Thank you for Dr. Cardon and Jax and a lot of staff, and we've got just so many great people in the room. This is a great topic. It is a jewel of Maine, and just great to see everyone out. So everyone, have a great day. Thanks.